What's up, guys? This is Ian here, coach of your Liner Lantern, bringing you guys another episode of the Draft Recap series on the NCL YouTube channel. This is the NCL Season 2 Draft Recap for the Tampa Bay Buizels and their coach, Ben, or Fizzle the Hizzle. Ben came into this draft not wanting a middle pick, and unfortunately, the randomizer gave him a middle pick. I believe he ended up with the 7th overall pick, which is pretty bad. But as you'll see as we run through his draft, he got a lot of scary stuff. This is definitely on my list of huge threat teams. Excuse me, if not the most threats in a balanced draft. Like Cade's draft has a lot of threats, but it's also not very balanced. There's not a lot of bulk to counteract the offense that he drafted, so I would say it's more of a hyper offense team. Same thing with Jed. He's got a lot of hyper offense and maybe not so much bulk. But going into Ben's team, he does have a lot of bulk and he's got a lot of good offense. So we'll start off with his first pick, something that maybe shouldn't have lasted till 7th overall pick. But with Zeraora taking up so much priority in the draft, it ended up falling that far. So Ben ended up grabbing the monster itself, Kyurem-Black. Probably the scariest wall breaker in the entire format. The fact it has 170 base attack plus 120 base special attack is pretty insane. It's got really good natural bulk, and where it really lacks is it's just not fast enough. Like 95 speed, don't get me wrong, it's pretty good, but it's just not fast enough to sort of clean up some things. So it forces into a scarf roll some of the time, and the typing isn't fantastic on Kyurem-Black. That's kind of the downside to it. Ice is a very weak defensive typing. It is a fantastic offensive typing, and Dragon plus Ice is insane. But Kyurem-Black is now weak to Fairy, Dragon. It's neutral to Ice. It's weak to Rock. It's weak to Fighting. It's weak to Steel. It's neutral to Fire, which Dragon would normally resist. So there's quite a few things that Kyurem-Black's actually weak to, and hopefully he can patch that up with some of his later picks. Big thing with Kyurem is the Fairy. It doesn't really, like, he gets Iron Head, so you'll see a lot of the time Kyurem running like Steelium Z to be able to break a fairy. It's kind of hard for it to break down good fairies with unless they're weak to ice as well, or they predict the Z move with like a protect, or they double or something like that. So that's kind of where Kyurem struggles the most in my mind, as well as forcing it to lock itself into outrage to pick up some kills. If you don't have a lot of good hazard pressure with Kyurem, then it's not going to be able to pick up those crucial kills unless you're just using it to weaken stuff for priority. Yeah, so picking up something that kind of complements Kyurem, as well as a very expensive mon on the tier list, Ben ends up grabbing Zapdos with his next pick. I definitely meant to have Static on here. So Static is its other ability that it gets now. Sorry that it's not on the dock. Um, Zapdos is a pretty bulky mon. It's more of a specially offensive mon, but it can be run both ways. Don't let its stats deceive you. It's actually very bulky, and the fact that it gets reliable recovery. Something about Kyurem-Black is as well is that with all of its natural bulk, you can easily run sub-roost sets on it pretty effectively, and just be able to sort of sit in front of things and ice beam them to death with Kyurem-Black. It's the same sort of thing with Zapdos, but most of the time you're discharging things to death or thunderbolting things to death. Um, Unfortunately, this adds to his rock weakness right off the bat, but what's kind of cool is any physical attacker attacking Kyurem has a chance to be paralyzed by Zapdos switching in. Gives him a nice pivot option into some more defensive things that he might grab later as well, or be the defensive pivot or the defensive sponge that he needs to soak some hits. Not rock type hits, but it is a hazard remover for Kyurem-Black. Kyurem-Black does appreciate hazards being removed as it is weak to stealth rocks. I have played with my fair share of Zapdos, and I personally love this thing to death. I think it is a brilliant Pokemon. It's super obnoxious to play against, and generally you're going to want to Toxic it. So maybe he'll want to pick up a Cleric a little bit later on in the draft to be able to deal with that. Next up, he is going to grab something that sort of helps with Kyurem's Fairy weakness, and is the second part of his Fairy Dragon Steel Core. and he ends up grabbing Mega Scizor. Mega Scizor plus Kyurem-Black I'm actually using currently myself in the LET Season 2. It's a pretty insane combo because either Mega Scizor can break things down for Scarf Kyurem-Black to clean up later, or Kyurem can break things down for Mega Scizor to clean up with Bullet Punch later. It's pretty insane. Technician on its Mega form is just ridiculous with base 150 attack, and Stab on Bullet Punch is just absolutely ridiculous. Like a burned Mega Scizor can still OHKO Mega Diancie with Bullet Punch, which is absolutely insane to me. It's actually an extremely good physically defensive wall, which Zapdos typically leans to be more of a specially defensive wall these days. It's another pivot option, really good U-turner. Stab U-turn is always fantastic. It lacks on the special side, and it somewhat lacks on the special defense side. It would also be nice if it was a little bit faster. So at the moment, he's kind of got a slow, mid-tier, speed tier sort of team going on here. It is very scary. Scizor complements Kyurem-Black relatively well. What he will be looking to get in the future is a fire resist, because he doesn't have a fire resist at the moment, and it's Mega Scizor's quad weakness. Another unfortunate thing is that Mega Scizor doesn't take rock type attacks well, just like Kyurem, just like Zapdos. It is neutral to rock type attacks, so any special rock type hit kind of hits Mega Scizor, and it takes rocks neutrally. It does get defog, however, so he's now got 2 removal options, which is really good to support the Kyurem. That's mainly it. Most of the time you're going to see about the same Mega Scizor set. It is a setup sweeper. Kyurem-Black can be a setup sweeper with Home Claws, but it's typically not. So most of the time you're going to see Mega Scizor be the setup sweeper instead. More reliable recovery. So he's drafted 3 things to get Roost, which is kind of neat, and we'll sort of see how his team progresses. He is lacking on the hazard setting side, which is something that he's going to grab in round 4. He'll dip into tier 3 and grab Krookodile. Krookodile is a pretty good physical attacker. It's a decent Scarfer with like Moxie Earthquake, basically. Once their flying type's dead, you can just sort of Moxie Scarf Earthquake through their team, keep getting attack boosts, and keep hitting things hard. Pardon me. Intimidate's really useful. I think Intimidate is pretty clutch on this Mon. Just being able to sort of nerf some physical attackers from hitting the Kyurem, although Mega Scizor could tank physical attacks pretty well. It's a hazard setter for him, which is really good. It's a dark type, which is reasonably good coming up, but not necessarily the most important yet. The base 92 speed's not great against, like, with his team, because he's already got Kyurem at base 95, so there's only so much you can do there. Anger Point is a very niche ability, but I've seen it used once, and it worked. It relies a lot on luck, or it relies on you assuming your opponent is bringing Frost Breath, which is not a good assumption unless you're playing against Magic and you've, like, snaked his team to see what he's bringing. Kyurem's relatively low, sorry, not Kyurem, Krookodile's relatively low special bulk doesn't help it a ton, but it can be a good Assault Vest user. It's a great Pursuit Trapper for dealing with lots of Psychic types, and picking up a Ground type means he's got an Electric immunity now, which he previously didn't have. Zapdos doesn't really like Electric attacks, and his next pick really doesn't like Electric attacks. To finish off his Fairy Dragon Steel Core, he is going to grab his Primarina. Primarina is a pretty disgusting special wall, and it is an amazing specs user. Pop the specs on this thing, click Moonblast over and over and over again, and you pretty much clean through teams. Liquid Voice as an addition didn't really do too much for Primarina. It's not super useful. It's very niche. More of a doubles tactic typically to get like stab hyper voices out of your Liquid Voice because it doesn't work like Aerialate or Pixelate where it boosts the power. It's keeping it the same, just changing it to the water typing. In fact, I would say in Draft League format is probably more detrimental than helpful, because if you're turning Hyper Voice into a water attack, then you are playing into water absorb mons, and the problem with that is Primarina already has Sparkling Aria, which is a water type stab attack that's the same base power as Hyper Voice, and it hits through sub already like Hyper Voice. So there's not really a point in using Liquid Voice in that scenario when you can run Torrent, and when you get low, your water attacks will be boosted instead. So that's kind of my thoughts on Primarina. It's not the best physically defensive mon. Luckily, it's got a decent enough typing that it can tank lots of good physical hits. It's not weak to steel like Kyurem-Black is, which is kind of cool, but it's not resisting steel. Like Zapdos, Mega Scizor are his steel resist at this point. Primarina tends to cover some certain things. He's got a poison immunity in Mega Scizor for the Primarina. His grass resist right now is like Zapdos, Mega Scizor, and Kyurem, so he's got quite a few options there. I would say electric. He's probably going to want another electric sponge at some point, maybe a grass type or something to soak electric hits for him. Premier is kind of slow, so again, he's sort of on the slower end here. His fastest mon is Zapdos at the moment at base 100. Not super fantastic, but then he saw this sitting around in round 6, and he picked up Gengar, which is a pretty good special attacker. We can see he's got quite a few really good special attackers at the moment. Lots of good threats. He's only got the 1 hazard setter, 2 hazard removers at the moment. Primarina is a decent special wall, Zapdos decent special wall, Mega Scizor decent physical wall, so why not? Pick up special attacker. Ghost and poison type. It is a grounded poison type, so it can soak up toxic spikes, which is really cool. It's now the fastest mon on his team at base 110 speed. Shadow Ball is fairly spammable with Gengar. There's a few sets that you can run with it. It's not the most versatile mon ever because it's very frail on the physically defensive side. It is actually weak to Psychic as well, so a fast Psychic type can deal with it, and a fast Ghost type can deal with it as well. This is where Krookodile sort of synergizes really well with Gengar because Krookodile can tank those Psychic hits and the Ghost hits and then Pursuit Trap the opponent and let Gengar sort of free itself up late game to just click Sludge Wave or Shadow Ball or something late game. So I think there's a lot of good synergy going on there. Yeah, next up, he definitely wanted a Cleric at this point. He does not like status on this team, so it's a really good idea to pick up a Cleric, and he grabbed Licky. I think this is a solid pick. There's a lot of teams with weather in this draft, and Cloud9 eliminates the effects of the weather, which is really cool. Licky is a bulky boy. It's also an extremely versatile mon. I've used Licky many times in the past. I've run Power Whip Belly Drum sets with it. It's pretty insane. The setup options that it can get as well as just sort of sitting there and being fat with like Wish and Heal Bell. Big fan of the Licky pick. I think that it's pretty cool that he grabbed it in round 7. I may not have grabbed it that early, but it is one of the better clerics in the format. Sorry, one of the better lower tier clerics in the format. Picking up a normal type is kind of cool as well because it reduces Gengar's ghost weakness. Yeah, I'm not sure how well it synergizes with the team, but yeah, because things like Kyurem-Black, Zapdos, and Mega Scizor don't really need wishes passed into them when they can just roost anyways. It could help out Primarina a lot because Primarina doesn't really run recovery. Gengar's just going to get one shot anyways, so we'll sort of see if he's got some other options heading later into the draft here that are going to deal with that. It's sort of looking like a really slow team at this point to me, so I'm not super thrilled about that, but we'll just keep going. Next up, he grabbed regular Pinsir, and I believe this was like the first or the second tier 5 to go of the entire game. Regular Pinsir, sorry, is another Stealth Rock user, which helps out Krookodile a lot because before this it was the only Stealth Rock user. It's pretty neat that it gets Moxie. It's got a decent base attack and a decent base defense. Really good ground soak. It's a really good ground soaker with all of that defense. It can soak up earthquakes for days. Reasonable speed tier. I'm not sure how often we'll be seeing regular Pinsir, but it could be a neat bring for him. Like I said, it's a good bug type, which means it's a good ground soaker. I would say if he's not going to grab a grass type at all, then this is probably a decent option. Although I would recommend a grass type on most teams, just to be able to soak those electric hits for your water types every single time. Pinsir, it can fill a role in Mold Breaker. It can sort of set up in front of an Intimidate user or something like that. I think it's kind of neat. I'm not sure sort of how it fits onto this team. Maybe Ben will like post a comment down below explaining his thoughts on Mega Pinsir, or feel free to go check out Ben's channel in the description. It'll be linked. I'm not sure if at this point he'll have a draft recap up yet, or if he'll even do that himself. From what I've seen, I don't think he's posted anything yet. I believe he does plan to post YouTube content. I'm recording this pretty early. We're getting all these draft recaps out, and then they're just kind of going up day by day. So please don't blame me if he's already got one up and I'm not talking out of my ass at this point because he's like the 10th team on the list or something like that, unfortunately, because I'm going alphabetically. Yeah, next up he decided to grab his fire type, which is probably pretty good. Finish off that Firewater Grass core, a little bit of a lower tier Firewater Grass core, but he ends up grabbing Mmore. I'm a big fan of Mmore. I've used Mmore myself before. It's a pretty fun mon to use, honestly. It just hits so hard with Reckless Flare Blitzes. It's an incredible attacker. Unfortunately, base 110 HP really only matters in the grand scheme of recoil damage because its defenses are pretty bad. It's not going to want to take hits that much of the time. Most of the time you're going to see it actually getting a hit off, and that's kind of what it's going to do. The speed stat is kind of lackluster as well. It'd be nice if Emboar was a little bit faster on terms of like Blaziken, but Blaziken really was kind of too slow when Infernape came around, so then they gave Blaziken speed boost, and now Emboar is just at the bottom of the barrel for firefighting types, which luckily leaves it open to being a really great tier 3 pick, especially for Ben's Firewater Grass Core. Worthy to note that Emboar is weak to Psychic, which regular Pinsir can help out with, and Krookodile can help out with, as well as Gengar. So he's got a lot of ways to deal with the Psychic typing. I'm a little bit skeptical about the ground right now. He's got Zapdos to be immune, and he's got regular Pinsir to soak. So we'll see if he's going to pick something up, and he does in the Sceptile. Sceptile is another ground resist for him. Not the best Earthquake switch in at the moment with base 70 HP and base 65 defense. I was expecting a little bit more out of that, but it tends to be more of a special attacker, a fast special attacker. It's a decent unburden user. Typically, you see it run with a seed on Tapu Lele teams. It's a lot of Psychic Seed Tapu Lele teams to avoid things like Ice Shard. Well, sorry, not on Tapu Lele teams. Nobody runs regular Mega Sceptile in OU, but that's kind of Psychic terrain is typically what you see Mega Sceptile on lately, or electric terrain, because it resists electric attacks anyways. So that's regular Sceptile. I'm not a big fan of this in the Draft League format. I don't see too much of a use for it, honestly. I've seen regular Sceptile drafted a few times. I know Mortal drafted it last season on his team, and he didn't bring it to any games, I don't think, at all. So we'll sort of see how Sceptile does for Ben this season. I'm going to predict that it's not going to come to too many, just like regular Pinsir. It is tiered higher than regular Pinsir is, and maybe he was looking just for the highest grass type that he could find. Maybe he's going to figure something out in free agency and pick a better grass type that maybe synergizes with his team a little bit better. Because this being his fastest mon, spoiler alert, he doesn't pick anything faster in the last round. This is his fastest mon, and I think that that is a mistake personally, but maybe that's just the way that he plays the game. So, there's always that. Last but not least, he's going to grab Mesprit, mon that people call NuMu. It is almost as versatile as Mew. It's got decent base stats, just like Mew does. It's about 20 base points short of Mew, I believe, at 580 at this point, I think. Better attacking and defensive stats than Mew, but lacks in the HP and speed. It's another Stealth Rock setter. It's his final Stealth Rock setter, so not the best hazard options, and not the best removal options either. Really, he's only got Zapdos and Mega Scizor as his removal options, so that'll be something that he might have to watch out for is the hazard game. His team is relatively weak to rocks at the same time, so we'll sort of see how that goes. Mesprit is another pivot option for his team. Unfortunately, he doesn't have too many pivots. He's got the Mega Scizor, the Zapdos, and the Mesprit, and I think that's it. So we'll sort of see how that plays out for him. Kind of a lackluster end to the draft for him, in my opinion, after such a fantastic start. He started with such a huge, scary team, and it ended up just being kind of slow, and I think a little bit non-synergistic at the end. I think the last 4 picks were kind of weird, in my opinion. I like the Emboar pick. I like it on the team, but the Sceptile, the Pinsir, and the Mesprit were just all sort of strange. So now we'll talk about his strengths and weaknesses on the team. He has 7 grass resists. 7 grass resists. He covers for Primarina extremely well in this draft. He only has 2 grass weaknesses, those being Krookodile and Primarina. I think Primarina could be the star of this team, to be honest, based on that. He's got an insane amount of grass resist. 5 bug resists, which has actually kind of been standard, although he does have 3 bug weaknesses, so he's going to have to watch out for that. 5 fighting resist, which is really good, helps out the Krookodile, and it helps out the Kyurem-Black quite a bit. Um, in terms of major weaknesses, he does have 3 fire weaknesses, including his 4 times weakness on Scizor. He's not patched that up very well. He only has 2 fire resists, and that being Mmore and Primarina, neither of which have reliable recovery. So I feel like Licky is going to have to bring Wish quite a bit to be able to heal up those fire resists for him. Flying, he has 3 weaknesses to and only 1 resist to. He only has a resistant Zapdos. Luckily, Zapdos is an extremely good flying resist, but Mmore, Pinsir, what's the last flying weakness? Mmore, Pinsir, and Sceptile are all weak to flying. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, that's probably not the worst because he won't be bringing all 3 of those to the same game ever. And he also has 3 rock weaknesses in terms of 1 rock resist. His only rock resist being Krookodile. I'm a little bit sketched out by this because his main core of Zapdos, Kyurem-Black, and Scizor, Mega Scizor, either take them super effectively or neutral. Not a big fan of that. I would love to see more rock resists on this team, just because I think that having stealth rocks up on his side of the field are kind of going to hinder him a lot. We'll sort of talk about that as we get into the hazard game here. He does only have 3 stealth rock setters in Krookodile, Pinsir, and Mesprit. No other kind of hazards are on his team, and he only has 2 removal options in the Zapdos and the Mega Scizor with Defog each. I'd like to see some more removal for the Kyurem-Black on this team. I think he started off really well by picking Kyurem-Black. It's a powerhouse in the format, but it's only a powerhouse if you can build around it. And now we'll sort of move into the summary of his team. I'll just touch on a few things. Again, really solid Fairy Dragon Steel Core. I love it a lot. I'm kind of underwhelmed by his Fire Water Grass Core. I think by picking Kyurem-Black right away, you're sort of committing to build around it, and he maybe didn't build around it as much as I would have liked. I know that Ben is an amazing battler, and so I'm looking forward to seeing how he can adapt to that throughout the season. I also think that his team is pretty slow, with regular Sceptile being the fastest, and realistically Gengar being the fastest at base 110. Kind of sketches me out a little bit. His major threats are all under base 100 besides the Gengar, and I just think that he's going to have to rely on Licky as a passer most of the time. I also think Kyurem-Black is sort of going to be filled into his Scarf role most of the games that it comes because of that. He does have some really good natural bulk in Zapdos, Kyurem-Black, Mega Scizor, Primarina, and Licky, but he lacks recovery options on most of his walls. So that's kind of my thoughts on Ben's team and the Tampa Bay Buizels. Feel free to check Ben out. His link will be in the description. He's a new coach to the league, so welcome him to the NCL as well. We're really happy to have him around. He creamed me in AABL, and since then I've sort of had my eye on him to recruit him into the league, and luckily he said yes to joining the league, which I'm really excited about actually, because I think Ben's a cool dude and he's a really creative builder. Yeah, so Ben's link will be in the description. Mine will as well. I would like to thank you for checking out all of the NCL content on the channel, including this video, and I would urge you to check out more of the NCL content or keep supporting us and or keep supporting our content throughout the rest of the season. Thank you very much, guys, and I hope you have a fantastic day.